already see for 80 case study, okay, 80 case, we already have quite a bit of sources everywhere. We already have information from, you can go online and see a lot of SBL case reviews that's going on. I think you might have been reviewing some of it, okay. They do talk about all the possible issues and all that, but the way we're going to do this is just be aware that you don't want to build possible issues have been identified. Now, possible issues are, well, we call that spots. Spots are dangerous, okay. Spots are dangerous because if you end up spotting, what happens is, if the exam question comes out slightly different, you end up writing your spotted question as opposed to writing what was asked. So you got to be very careful on the spots, because there are many times the issues, of course the issue spotted is going to come out. Issues could be spotted, okay, could be spotted. Let's see, the issues that could be spotted include things like your strategy choice, okay. They could ask you a strategy choice. They could ask a strategic analysis of an industry, okay. They could ask a implementation, okay. Those are definitely something that can come out. This is one already you know, okay. On the other side, you already have something to do with governance, risk, and controls. These are all possible questions that do come out every sitting. There's always an issue from each sitting. So we can always speculate what is coming out. But at the end of the day, the story that you get, okay, remember there is always a story, okay, and the story will be the one that determines what is going to happen. And this is going to come from the unseen. And predicting the unseen is a bit dangerous. But what I would suggest you to do is usually use the approaches that we have seen in the past and understand how to solve the requirements that the examiner has asked. So the focus here is looking at the requirements, looking at what has been given in the past, and also you need to pick up this part. You need to know the articles. So the technical article is more likely to come out rather than this one. So you have already went through the case study called the two case studies I gave you. One was related to the football stadium. Remember, I think you all did that already. Okay, that's the only football stadium question that was available. The other one was HGT, okay, which is more on the financial side. Okay, financial side. Okay, now let's just quickly run through. I'm just going to go through the materials that's also on the Jamboard so that you can get a review of it. Let me just run through the materials first. Let's look at the idea of new development. Okay, 80 might sign a new player, a key player might have left. Okay, you already know that there is something called talent management issues. Now, players going and coming out is a normal aspect of the business. Just remember, normal aspect of the business. So it is not a big issue for the company. Changes in management team or new sponsorship deal might be signed. Again, there could be new development. This could be something that's happened in the business. This could be the unseen. Could be, but I'm not saying anything else. But we can say, if you have issues on players, I would suspect more something like this. Player misbehave. Okay, what do we mean by player misbehave? Okay, player misbehave, a good example of player misbehave is this one. This is the idea of, let's say, the players get probably thrown into issue whereby they went and bite somebody, and they had some problems. Okay, a good example of this would be something like this case study here. Okay, so you might get a situation like this. Okay, Luis Suarez back in World Cup needs to win against Ghana. Okay, during the 2014, this is one of the things. But the idea here is for biting PSV. There was a bite for biting. So let's say you might get a situation here. Player misbehave, like this case where the player bites this one. And how do you handle the situation? There is one of the most shocking incidents. Okay, he was ultimately banned for 9 games and sent home. So this is one of those events. Okay, but it's not there. But that's the this is more the implications that you have to consider. How does this affect? Like player misbehave, they get banned. You may then have to consider how you deal with this problem. So that's more likely an issue. So I'm just going to go inside there, and then I'm going to just say, look, you might have one other situation. So let's talk about the situation. Player misbehaves. Okay, if the player misbehaves, then you are looking at this situation. You might see an impact on current performance. You might have an impact on current performance, and you must see whether you have a So the player might get banned. Okay, negative press comes up. Impact on current performance. Is there a mitigation plan ready? On the other side, you have to also look at the PR, image of the club might be affected. The image of the club might be affected. Then you might also have to think about the you need to remember, is this a key merchandise? Was this a key merchandise? Now, remember, some players are more saleable than other players, and if the player goes out, then you can't actually make money. The merchandise and all that might actually be having to be written down. This might be written down. So you need to be careful with that part. You also have to consider so how to develop the team motivation and cohesion, because you might have a key player. Remember, this could be a key player. If a key player goes out, you might have to consider the impact on the team itself, whether the team could perform well, how well will the team take it, and whether you need to be worried about the team cohesion and the team building and new members coming in. So those are things that you can talk about. Player misbehaving. Now, at the same side, you can put a smaller one here. Okay, this could be another problem. Another problem you might have is the fans misbehaving. How to reduce the fans misbehaving? You might have to think about the implications of fans misbehaving, like fines, and how it affects the image of the club, and may have to think how it affects your ability to bring fans in to the away matches, and whether you can bring the fans into other people's fans into your club because of the fear. So you have to consider the fans misbehaving and the player misbehaving. That was what I would suggest that might come out here. Now, the new sponsorship deal, I would say there is a possibility there, and this one here, just be aware, the new sponsorship, hold on first, the new sponsorship deal, this one could be something you think about in terms of partnership. So you might think about whether it's worthwhile to go into a long-term partnership. What is the advantage, disadvantage of going into a long-term partnership? Now, that's possible, and I think partnership is kind of important given the following thing. Just remember, let me just go to that spot that I think is important for you to be aware of. So do be aware that there was a question on this one. Growing in partnership is kind of a critical aspect of the business. Do be aware that you may want to think about strategic alliance. Okay, who would you ally with? Okay, this is just a discussion on this area. I just want to jump into this area because these are possible issues, because this is the newest technical article, so the examiner might want to test this one. So we talk about this idea. So you got strategic alliance. You may want to ally with somebody. Okay, you can also think about JV. Okay, joint venture might be relevant. JV for somebody. Now, which type of joint venture is more relevant for you? Is it the project base, or is it going to be the functional base? You got functional, remember? Functional basically means you know that they are good in certain functional area, so you can work together and see how it works, or you can do vertical JV. So we might have to consider this one. Franchising is definitely not relevant for this question. Franchising is not a relevant idea for this place. Licensing is a possible idea. Licensing some of their technology or some of their images. So licensing is relevant. Now let's look at this spot. Why licensing is relevant for this company? So licensing is relevant because they could probably license the merchandise. Okay, they can their kits. Remember their kits. In this case study, there was something called kits. So let's make sure you are aware of those kits. Still remember there was something called kits. Just pay attention to that. We have something called kits. Let me just jump to this. So do remember they had something here. they have some idea called kits. Let's look at the kits. They had certain kits that they were selling off. Remember, those are things that are kind of important for you to be aware. It was in the revenue side. Okay, remember the breakdown of the revenue. What was the revenue items? Those are possible. That this one, the official replica kits, primarily replica shirts. Okay, those things I think you can go for. Okay, those could be licensed out to a country. This is more relevant if you are looking at foreign market. Okay, that's one. So that's an area where you can think about licensing. Now, the alliance, on the other hand, could be linked to their So over here, there is a potential for alliance in terms of stadium. Because remember, if you look at the company, okay, you look at the company, you can see that there is, remember, right over here, they already talked about the stadiums having higher capacity. We don't know. We know there are two other stadiums nearby. AT, Athletic Transcentral Stadium, nearby to two other stadiums. So you might go into an alliance. You might discuss the idea of, is it financially feasible? Is it FAS? Remember, this could be an FAS question. FAS question asking you feasibility, acceptability, suitability for this area. It means, is it possible for you to get something in this place? What are the issues in terms of getting this? So you might think about FAS in terms of doing alliance with somebody else. Remember, it is still code sharing. Although they are competing with each other, they are competing in a friendly way. They are fighting in the match. And their stadium will still be empty when there is no matches going on. So we are talking about capacity. There is a free capacity available. So how do we work together to maximize this capacity? You have capacity, I have capacity. If we are nearby, let's say I have 38,000, but you have maybe 55,000 capacity. So if you want to go there and use that stadium, you should be okay. You could probably get more money. Now, of course, is this financially worthwhile? Okay, do remember, is it financially worthwhile? You may need to evaluate the financials. Now, when you evaluate the financials for this, do remember, you are now at 96.5% capacity. So you know how many people are coming to your stadium already. Is 96.5% times 38,000. Now, if you can see that if you move to a new stadium and you can generate maybe 48,000 visitors, then you need to consider how much have you moved up, because you might be able to maybe hit 96%, let's say, of 55,000. So that way you might be getting a lot more. So you might say, how do we maximize? What's the value? So you might do some mathematics here, maths. Okay, simple maths, not complicated maths. Just telling how much money extra you're getting and how much you want to share with the other party. Because if you do alliance, you have to share the operational costs and all that will have to be covered. and you have to consider that the other party is not going to give you something for free. They want something in return. So that's where the alliance is possible. Same way, you can do an alliance for training facility. Maybe your training facility is not used all the time. Maybe you can use shared training facilities. But as of now, you can say that the company's training facility is high utilization. High utilization. Okay? So those are things with the articles for the alliance you can consider. On the other side, you have another one called the JVs. Joint venture is the other issue that you might go into. Now, here, remember, you got horizontal joint venture, same industry collaboration. High, in the case partners may be competitors, but venture will pool resources to gain advantage. This one, highly unlikely. So horizontal, most likely, no, I don't think they can pool the resources. Alliance might work, but horizontal JV is going to be tricky. Okay, so joint development is one. Okay, the other one you have here is vertical JV. You might JV with a buyer and supplier operating in the same chain. Now, in this case, it is possible for them to JV with a manufacturer or a online seller, okay, or a retail shop, retail chain. So it is possible to create a retail chain, or it's possible to get a JV with a manufacturer to cut down costs, or you could do it online seller. So both ways are possible. Now on this side, functional JV, it's possible the company may want to, remember there's a situation where they may want to think about organizing for a functional issue. Now, which function is it that they are not very good at? So they might not be very good at sponsorship. So they might have a sponsorship JV, somebody who specializes in sponsorship, getting the good sponsors in. That might be one. The other one might be fan development specialist. So you might JV with a fan development specialist. That might be something you could consider. Final one here is the project JV. This one you will probably go for a project, which is very likely for stadium. So it is very likely that you might get a stadium JV and you might have to go with a developer. That's possible. It is possible you might work together with a project JV just to develop the stadium. So these are all possible scenarios that the company can come out, or the scenarios that can hit you, and it comes from you looking at this part. So you do need to think about the issues. You don't need to know about knowledge. Think about it. You need to know about knowledge. You need to know about expertise. Trust. You need to think about synergy. Okay, you need to think about synergy, and you need to think about control also. Who controls the situation? So these are words that you may have to apply to discuss the JV, evaluate the JV. So as long as you bring in certain points for the issue, it might be enough. How do you work together? How do you trust these people? What's the knowledge they're bringing in? What's the assets they're bringing in? So you are going to look at a few things to see whether or not they are worthwhile to do this thing. So this is one of the area the exam team may want to test, because this is a new technical article. Remember, this is a new technical article. Probability is high. Now, keyword here is derived from strategic plan that take risk to capture market share and gain advantage. You can do planned growth, okay, invest profits by raising finance organically. This is the norm, okay, with retained profits. Now, think about it. This company, there is lack of retention. Okay, remember, lack of retention. And do remember, financially, this company has been declining in performance. Remember, financial decline. So I'm just going to make a note there, financial decline. So that kind of means that you may not have enough resources to do it yourself. Because of the maybe lack of retention due to family business, you might be giving back a lot of dividend, and the financial decline faced by the company, it is a high chance the company may not have sufficient finances to go into a new venture by themselves. So they will definitely look at some kind of partnership. Okay, that's about this idea of this article. Okay, we're done with this article. The next article and the next issue that we're going to look at is going to be, okay, let's look at the detailed financial information. Okay, from the detailed financial information, let me just get back into that one. Unseen material might include a recent balance sheet or income statement shows a significant change in the club financial position. This could be due to factors like large investment, significant debt repayment, or substantial changes in revenue. Now, I would suspect that you would get a you might get a forecast P&L for 5 years. Now, in terms of 5 years, okay, you get a forecast P&L for 5 years. In terms of 5 years, what happens? Okay, you will probably have to consider, so it's a 5-year, how the expenses are, revenue. You might have to calculate the EBITDA. Remember, it's possible you might have to calculate EBITDA. That's possible. But most likely, I repeat, most likely, if they are going to give you financials, okay, I just want to highlight very clearly, this question, I don't know you will get a financial. There is a high chance of financial. I would break the financial into 2 areas. One is, so one is called compliance financials. Okay, the other one is basically so I would say you might get 2 types of questions when it comes to financial. Compliance financial, you're probably going to look at the 5 years and see whether your relevant earnings So here, when we talk about the compliance financials, you will probably be given all the numbers. You really don't need to calculate. I'm telling you, you may not need to calculate. There is a small chance of calculations like we saw in this case study. Okay, which case study is that? Okay, the case study you might need to recall is going to be the you got this case study. Give me a second. So you might have to think about this case study, guys. The case study that had the nearest financial analysis was something like this. You had the CC case study. Now, I'm very suspicious of CC case study, and I think you will probably need to go through the CC case study one more time. I'll just put the whole thing inside the system one time for you to review, so you can go through the CC case study. But what I would suggest you to be careful is you have a look at this part. Because these things are very likely for you to come out. Okay, I repeat, very likely for you to come out. The one that I think more likely for you to come out is this one. Analyze the financial, non-financial issues will affect the final decision to accept the contract to build the road. Now, I'm going to say you're going to have analyze the financial, non-financial issues which will affect the final decision whether to accept the contract to build a new stadium. That might be the question you might get. And discuss the difficulties that the club may face in fulfilling criteria of the regulator. The criteria of the regulator, because rather than talking about this issue, in this case is about what the Desmond Antonio wanted, you have a regulator that's already put certain guidelines. And if you do a major project like investing in a stadium, you probably have to look at the financial, non-financial, which is going to be the norm. Then you have to think about the difficulties that you might fulfill, or the issues you might face when you build the new, remember, when you build the new stadium, you're definitely going to have some problems in terms of the project. So what are the difficulties you are going to handle? Now, this is good because this case study is a reasonably good angle because of the stadium versus road. They are still building contracts. Are you clear or not? So I would say you need to focus on the CC case study. I will make sure CC case study is inside. I want you to make sure you run through the CC case study one time. Not that it will come out, but the issues will be very similar. Now, you also want to pay attention to the requirements, because I tell you the most important thing is understand what the examiner wants you to talk to get the marks. 80% of the failure is because students do not write for the requirement asked. They read partially, like this question. Analyze financial, non-financial issues. A lot of students just analyze the financial issues, did not touch the non-financial issues, and therefore lost a lot of marks. That's important for you to understand, that it is possible for you to lose marks because you just answered one part of the question. So I would say just be careful. You might get a question like this. So we'll just put that on a standby mode for you. Well, what else is the problem with the stadium? Remember, there are a few issues with the stadium itself. Okay, the stadium itself. Okay, those are already the current problems that you can discuss, and you can say that this. So we already know all these problems with the stadium. Now, if these are all the problems with the stadium, then there is the case, remember. Well, they did say something. The clubs with the top 3 Division 1, the clubs with the top 3 Division 1 have all moved to new stadiums in the last 8 years. So this is the clubs, the top 3 teams. Now, look at, I'm trying to give you some reasons for why you need to have a case for a new stadium from this argument here. And this is very close to this case study. I'm trying to stick to this case study, in fact. So we are talking about financial and non-financial, okay? So you probably want to make sure the fans issues are going to be taken care of, traffic, and also don't forget do remember the current stadium is kind of bad because of where is it? Long queues, refreshment outlets. So you want to probably put that into the picture also. So you might want to consider possible kiosk solutions for this one. So that's possibility for this question. So there is an issue for this question. Remember, they did talk a lot about the company, okay? And of course, financially, because you are renting it out, remember? Leased. Indian City Council. So you may have these issues with the stakeholders in this case, and you may want to consider how this happens. So this is what are we looking at now in terms of this case study. I think the CC case study is quite important because you may also get, guess what, a project initiation document related to the stadium contract, and you might have to think about that one. So PID for the stadium building contract, very possible. What do you need to include inside? So if you have a stadium case, okay, remember, I'm going to tell you there are two case studies out there that you need to go through already because of this. The two case studies that you have to go through is going to be, one of it is of course this one, which is the CC case study. The other case study that's worthwhile for you to go through is the, I remember the 2 case studies you have to go through are 2 case studies, 2 cases so far. One is CC case study. The other one is both of this have building a new hotel, building a road. Okay, those are the major ones where they are building something new, and those are the big ones. I don't think you're going to use the case study that came out before that. There was Yax Marine. Yax Marine is a question where they were moving to a new location. That one wasn't a big issue. This is just a new stadium. So I think these 2 case studies are a reasonably good case study. NEBI case study has enough issues in terms of the so NEBI might have building a new hotel, project management issues related to building the hotel in terms of stadium requirement. I think that would be the big one. Also, there was a nice part with now, there was an evaluation of the 2 options. When you have to evaluate, it's like, for example, in this case is, do we upgrade the current stadium? Okay, now those are things that come up. Okay, are there issues I want you to be aware of? Okay, let's look at the other issues you can. So the case of new stadium, you have other issues. What are other issues you have to be aware of? Okay, just remember other issues. Do remember, there is something called impact on the training ground. So the CC case study, I do want to tell you that the PID, quite important. Okay, so I'm just going to put that there. Question 4, not so critical. Okay. Control weakness during the project is also kind of possible. I repeat, control weaknesses and issues during the project. This one is also possible, not impossible, this type of question. So just make sure you cover all the case study requirements, especially question 1, 2, 3 of the CC. Quite important because the examiner may want to touch base. Now also be aware, the question for CC, another important issue was, in the CC case study, they had given cash flow, something like this. Okay. Now, when they give this for the CC case study, it didn't. We only looked at the bottom. We only looked at the bottom. Got it? And we looked at the income at the top. We just looked at the top, how much is coming in and how much is going out. We looked at it from a cash flow point of view. Now, when you do this, you're going to be probably given a much more detailed version of the projected cost. Could be the project cost, could be the projected financial cost or the cash flow of the business. Now, you got to be careful with the case study here because of this issue. Do be aware of this part. Relevant income, relevant expenditure. You got to be careful here because they did not put, I repeat again, they did not put the expenses for the stadium inside here. Loss of disposal of tangible non-current asset, yes. Loss of sale player, yes. Finance cost, dividend. So I would suspect if you were to take this project, remember, if you're going to take this project, I'm going to just tell you what I suspect might be the issues that come from financing this one. Now, what's going to happen is you might get hit in the finance cost section or the dividend. The shareholders might want higher dividend for contributing the money, or they take a loan. So I suspect you have to be very careful because a lot of people are saying that you're going to have to build the stadium, but the stadium cost does not fall inside this picture. The stadium cost does not fall into this picture. The key part that you're going to get is going to be the finance cost or the dividend. So I think you may have to recalculate the finance cost. So be aware. So this is going to be most likely now when you say finance cost impact, what we are saying is that there is a cost from debt, but also you got to be careful. You need to think about the cash flow. Just be careful. Don't ignore the cash flow. Why? Loans can be different types of loan. You got loans that you pay immediately over time, or you might have loans that are due at a certain point in time. So you got loans at a certain point in time. Now, in terms of investment, you look at the investment and you think about this idea. Where is the money coming from? Where? Source. That's one thing. And the source affects the you might have to consider whether you want to use NPV or APV. Remember, adjusted present value, if you get 100% debt. If you get from the current shareholders, then you have to consider the changes in the cost structure. So that's investment. Then you also have to consider the so you'd have to do a projection reliability. The questions that do this is 8 hats, and also let me just get the questions for you. So these are the questions you have to go through. You have this question called 8 hats, and also PAA. Okay, you might have to do these 2 questions, 8 hats and PAA question, as an important indicator because of the idea of investment and looking at the investment and seeing whether it's reasonable or not. The other issue about these things you might have to consider right. you may have to be skeptical about the assumptions made in the investment in terms of cost and also the revenue and the wins, especially the wins. I repeat again, especially the wins. Because remember, they have not won for a very long time. So how are they going to get a win if they don't put in the money for the players? They must invest in new players. That's the investment side. Okay, just be aware of that part there. Okay, now let's move on to the next issue. Okay, I've touched base with the investment side. I also need to immediately touch base with, guess what? You know this question, you're going to have a lot of projects issue. Let's look at the projects issue. You got benefits on one side. You got the business case, which is the one I'm suspicious about. You got the PID. So you might have a few of this case things done. Now I'm just going to jump quickly into your notes here. Yeah, you might have something down this road. Project documentation. Okay, do remember this case. The business case, this is likely for you to come out. And you may need to evaluate, remember, evaluate the business case given to you, given. So it might be given to you and you need to consider whether the business case is appropriate or what is missing in the business case. That's likely for you to come out. Okay, so here, do remember, you must have a current situation. What is the current situation? The need for the project, the need, which I think we just talked about it. Internal, external analysis. Okay, what's the internal analysis and external analysis? Well, we already put in some internal, external by looking at all the internal problems and the external trends that have come out with the other stadiums. You identify problem which needs solution requiring a project process. For example, you might have issues with the supply chain for crucial components. So in this case, there are issues with the stadium causing an impact to the business and also making it very hard for the fans to be saving or the fans to get a full experience. So now options considered and chosen. Okay, this is very important. What are the options and why did you choose? Now the option was, I gave you the option, either we upgrade the current 90-year-old stadium, we spend significant money to upgrade the stadium, which means you have to close the stadium and do your upgrades, or you build a new stadium which is in the land adjacent to you and figure out what to do. But if you build the stadium, there's a lot of money needed. Manufacturing organization may have to consider strategic partnership. Now this is what I told you is possible in the exam already. You will consider possibility of partnership. Now who you want to partner with? So partner with the person who wants naming rights. So understand what's the meaning of naming rights, guys. Recently, I think in Malaysia, one of the let me see, MRT There, naming rights. I was surprised that this was happening in Malaysia itself. There. Deloitte Malaysia unveils TTDI, notice, TTDI Deloitte MRT station, which means they named the station Deloitte, okay? There, TTDI Deloitte MRT station, its integration to 29 station, which is already working for 220,000 days. So this is an example of naming rights. Now, this could have been sold. Remember this there? Deloitte sponsorship exemplifies successful private-public partnership. This is what I wanted you to be aware of. That means you might think about how you can do a partnership with a proper sponsor so that you could generate some funds. So that's that naming rights could be sold and you could partner there. So that's how that business case strategic partnership could come in. This might mean you may need to evaluate partner. Careful, you may have to say which partner is better for you to give the naming rights to. How are you going to evaluate this big decision? Because if you give this, it's like, for example, if I'm not mistaken, in UK, so you have stadiums that have names in them, okay? Let me see first. There, I give you an example here. So this is one example, okay? The other one that you have here is this one over here. And you can see, like, you know, the names of the stadium. Wembley Stadium, you got Old Trafford, you got Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, London Stadium, Anfield, you got Villa Park, you got Stadium of Light, that was really nothing much, St. James, City of Manchester Stadium, Emirates Stadium, that's one, okay, Stamford, Goodison, Allen, Hillsborough, so King Power Stadium, I don't know, maybe, so there might be some kind of stadiums which may be named, okay, so I wanted to be clear about this one. So this is the one known as Arsenal Stadium for UEFA community, is football stadium in Holloway, London. So this is an example, and you can see the capacity here. It was completed, and remember, 1997, Arsenal export possibility relocating to New Zealand, having been denied planning permission to expand its home stadium. So it wanted to expand its home stadium, but it was denied planning permission. Okay, after considering various options, including the purchase of Wembley. So you can see, maybe the company can buy another station. This is an alternative. Just make a note there, that they can actually consider of buying. Let me just write that down, okay, here. So those are things you have to consider. Okay, Those are things you have to consider for this case. And this is why we just jump a little bit into the stadium histories and issues with the stadium. Remember, a lot of them, when they build a stadium, they have financial problem in terms of cash flow. That's why I asked you to look at the CCK study, because it needs financial cash flow issues. Club was redeveloped. Notice that the club's former stadium was redeveloped as a Highbury Square apartment complex. So if you do sell, if you do this, do create one, remember. So the old stadium was sold to generate cash, okay? Stadium has gone underground process of arsenalization, okay, aiming to restore visible link to Arsenal history. You do need to remember, new stadium, so in this 18ism, okay, that's one of the things you should be aware of, the new stadium issue. That's one. Just remember, okay. This is another issue you might get to think about, okay. What happened if, in this case, the starting is a tragedy? What happened is your stadium is already packed. Your stadium is already packed, and you can see that there was something going on in terms of the stadium itself, whereby the stadium had a disaster. This is where human crash at a football match. It occurred during a FA Cup between Liverpool. Okay, this is what could happen. So this is another issue. I'm just going to put that other issue there. This could be one of the issues you need to be careful with, and this is something that you can see is important, because why? Let's look at the company itself and see whether they have identified that as a risk. Do remember, because the company is kind of pay attention, they did not identify this as a risk. Okay, let's just quickly run through the general risk faced by clubs in KLN include, so far nothing here talks about this issue. pay attention. Nothing here talks about this issue, which is what I would suspect. Sometimes the question comes out from the blue. And this is a good such event. The whole story could start with a disaster. Remember, the whole story starts with disaster. And disasters are not new. There are case studies which start with a problem, a huge problem. Company has a breach of data. How do we do this? How do we settle this problem? So here, this is a football club. The biggest problem they could ever have is in a stadium which is at packed capacity. Okay, tragic rush condition. Well, if you don't understand that, well, you don't need to see Final Destination to figure this out. Final Destination, the last Final Destination, you can see it was a stadium and there was a big explosion and everybody dies. We're not talking about that. We are already talking about real life things now. First and second club to have stadia all seated in time. They are stadia all seated in time for the season. Like many other clubs, experience difficulty in raising income for converted terrace areas. Club introduced a bond scheme, offered supporters the right to purchase season ticket as it renovated the stand. So this is one only viable option. They did not want to compromise the tradition. So they sold live, maybe 1 year, 2 year season ticket. You can go in anytime you want, okay? And you could have problems with the season. So you now know why they have that season ticket behind there. Also, why would they want to sell that season ticket? Is because of the problems they had with these clubs when they moved away from their standing tickets to their seated tickets, okay? Pay attention, not started refurbish, high ticket price served to the club's existing debt, low attendance figures force Arsenal to explore possibility of building a larger stadium. Now, remember, this is low attendance figure because of high pricing, which is another issue I want to talk about. So there is a pricing issue that might come into consideration in this question. Be aware, we are just looking at one problem faced by one stadium. Okay, so in this case, you can see Arsenal initial proposal to rebuild Highbury was met with disapproval of local stadiums as it required the demolition of 25 neighbouring houses. Problematic once grade 2 listing. Club abandoned its plans, deciding a capacity of 48,000 was not large enough. Arsenal then investigated possibility of relocating to Wembley. Notice this part. Arsenal then investigated the possibility of relocating to Wembley Stadium and bid for the ground. Okay. They also had a problem with this. Okay, so this is another problem. You want to acquire also, they may have the football regulators. Notice this part. Football Association National Stadium opposed offer, claiming it harmed the bid. Okay. Then Arsenal withdrew the bid for Wembley purchase. The club, however, was given permission to host. Arsenal, at time of competition, twice exiting the group stage. Then only came this part, the side. So you notice this one here was this initial proposal to build was met by disapproval of local resident. That's why I asked you to do the case study called the football case study, because it already covered this issue with this one. Are you clear now? This issue with the Arsenal rail case study. That's what really happened there. Then they came up with the site selection. Then notice Alliance of 16s group representing local residents business against redevelopment. So every time there is a possible, remember, possible plan. But one of the things you do need to be aware of is okay, the capacity that should be aimed for. So when we look at the capacity itself, have a look at the capacity of the current stadiums. Remember, 38,000. So this one, very important number here. Why is this number important? Okay, the number is important because of this reason. I will show you how this works out, okay, in another way. Okay, the way you would have worked through this is this part. You do need to get the numbers out. Okay, I'm going to look at the numbers here. If you look at the numbers here, 693, you do need to take these numbers and put it inside, because you know one of the questions you're going to get is what is the optimum stadium capacity, okay, and what is the possible average income. Remember, revenue in annual accounts excluding player trading. So these are the analysis you have to do. Okay, let's do a quick analysis of this. Give me a second. Let me just get this opened up somewhere else also so I can see the numbers. Okay, you put this in spreadsheet moment and then you do this. I don't think any of you did this. Okay, remember, I don't think any of you did this. You'd have put the income on one side, 693 Okay, now that you got that information, that's your average income, guys, based on the capacity level. So you can see that this club is not doing so badly. They are earning a bit more higher, remember? But this is something I want you to look at. There is something you're going to be looking at, which is called okay, we're going to look at whether okay, you do need to know the correlation between this Okay, now you have a few correlations that you should pick up. We can say that based on if I was to take capacity and average income, there is very low correlation between capacity and average income. Okay, if I was to look at, remember, if this one, remember, I'm looking at capacity and income. There's a high correlation between capacity and income. If I was to look at standing and correlation, there's a high correlation between standing and income. Remember, it's negative also, it's very strong. The outcome is very strong. Standing with last year is moderately strong. Okay, moderately strong. Average income and income is not really consistent. Okay, that's basically it. So you do need to know which is your forecast. Can you forecast the number? Because why? You have a few sets of data here. Any data outside data that's outside 38,000, which is not going to be happen, but above 73,000 is extrapolation. So what is the number that you're supposed to put? Do remember This guy's got 60,000, but he's only earning about 468,000. This guy's got 38, he's kind of there. And this guy's got 43, slightly bigger. He's earning slightly more only, okay? So it should be, if I use the average of this one, I would have got a higher rate. So let me just test and see what happens if you use the individual average for each one. So your income pay attention to what I just did. What I just did is, if I was to use the income here, and compare with this one, these two guys are underperforming. These two guys, especially this one here, is underperforming. I would say this 1, 2, 3 stadiums are not performing really well, because you are performing better than them if I use the relatively same pricing approach. So remember, if I use the same pricing approach, I get a much more better ratio. Now, if I use, remember, this is me using this average times 38. Now, I'm going to use the other way around. So you can see, if I use this 9,000 across the range, I can see where my income is going to be. The potential for me is to go up to, if I reach 73,000, I could earn 657, I could earn 540, assuming I get the same kind of numbers. Remember, the same kind of numbers coming in, 96.5. So that is the income that you are looking at. Remember, that is the income you are looking at. So you should be aware how to calculate this. This is average income, current average income times the capacity of each other stadium. This is the using this income, the average number, the average income times the current capacity of your stadium. So if you were to use the same type of income, it doesn't seem to be very different. So this appears to be very indifferent. So the capacity is the one that's a big issue. You may want to see how much money you can earn. Question is, what should be the target capacity for your stadium? If you are building a new stadium, remember, the factors that you will talk about, is the possible correlations that exist between the stadium income and the stadium's capacity, or the income of the club, excluding the players, and the capacity, and also the income of the club versus their status. Are you clear? Versus their status. Now, another one here, does the capacity affect the, remember, does the capacity affect the standing last year? Not really, but remember, these guys have been moving 1, 2, 3, 4. If you look at this 1, 2, 3, 4, these guys have been moving up and down, but these guys have dropped dramatically. They said these 3 guys put new stadium in place. Just make a note. These 3 guys put new stadium in place. These 3 guys are the ones who put a new stadium in place. The rest of them have not put a stadium in place. So the correlation is just trying to figure out how capacity correlate with income. Is there a correlation? How the standing now correlate with your income? How the standing last year correlate with the income? Is there a correlation between your standing now and your income, standing last year and the income? These are all discussions. Why? Because you may have to consider what is your capacity target. This is going to be a major consideration in your decision making. How much do you bill for? Do you bill for 80,000? If you bill for 80,000, you will have to extrapolate because you are outside the current range of data. If you bill for 25,000, not worth it. You're not solving any problems. So you're definitely going to go up. But how much up? Are you going 50,000? Are you going 30,000? Are you going 60,000? What's the number you are looking at? That's the important part for you to understand. Remember, this was number 2 last year. They dropped to number 7 this year. Got it? This is kind of a bad drop for this person. Okay, so that covers one of the issue with the project, which was maybe discussion on the numbers involved for capacity. You may need to think about the capacity and decide how many people should you bill for. That's the big one. Okay, now moving on. Let's make sure you know what's inside here. So this is where I stopped. Remember, the reason why I'm stopping there is because business case should justify the chosen option and see how it fit with the current situation. How do you justify 55,000? How do you justify 60,000 stadium? You look at the numbers here. You look at the numbers here and say like, look, the current top 3 have the highest number of capacity and they seem to earn the highest. This provides an input for you to build a large stadium. But the question mark is, should you build so big? How much is the limit for building it? Well, it looks like, remember, it looks like you may want to build at least 60,000. Just remember, make a note there. So that is why we may have to justify the capacity. Remember, 96%. Right, that's where the analysis of the correlation comes in. You may want to talk about the correlation as an argument factor for you. So this is because we looked at the justification. Now, you may have, how do I get 657? Where do I get 657? 657 is 73 capacity times 9,000. Got it? 73 capacity for this stadium, remember, this stadium, times the 9,000 average income from this stadium. Okay? So that's how we get that 657 income. All right? This is the potential income. So this is the forecast income you can do for the company. They ask you to forecast the income. This is the way you should have forecasted. So remember, if they build a stadium about 70,000, you should expect an income of 630,000 to 657,000. If they are not doing that, remember the highest they can earn is 693. They cannot forecast that, oh, okay, we build 73,000, we expect 850,000, 850 million income. If they say that, you're going to question it. So just remember, Okay, you do get the idea about this, and the other problem is, do be aware, so you might end up earning very much more lower. Um, 540 is just a pro rate, but if you use a different number, you might get a completely lower number, like 296 number, because remember, this is me using 7008 times this number. Can you see not? So you might end up going as low as show the numbers, if you have to show 60, this one is going to be 468. Okay, that's basically the current situation. So you might get numbers already given to you, and you may have to comment on the numbers. Okay, that's the stadium numbers, and remember that's a big one you have been given already. So the stadium is a possible issue to discuss. Okay, this is one. Remember, there are, I believe in this question, there are possibly two financial scenarios. One is related to the compliance side, one is related to the investment. So the one I'm talking right now is about the investment, investing into the stadium. Remember, I did highlight and said there are two types of investments. One is the compliance financial, one more is the investment financials. So investment financial, remember 8 hats and PAA case study is quite important for you to go through and evaluate. Okay, let's move on to the next part, which is the other part of the project part. So feasibility. Selected option must be feasible for the project to go ahead. Feasibility considers whether it's possible you are successful. If in our example, they decide to produce component in-house, high-level feasibility study should include analysis whether physical human resource available to undertake the project. So if you were to move into a new stadium, remember, if you move to the new stadium, who are the people involved? Remember, you already have some people you have to get involved, which is called the project team. So who should be the sponsor in this case? If you get a question on this part, you may have to think about who in the organization structure should become the sponsor for the company. So here, which person? Should it be the finance director? Should it be the football director? Should it be the marketing IT? Should it be the commercial director? Or should it be the admin director? Who should be the project sponsor in this case? Remember, the football director is busy with the football playings and all that. So remember, football, oversight of football team, coaching. Football director is for transfer policy. Now, should he be involved, or should the commercial manager should be involved, or should the admin manager be involved? This is the big question mark. Who should be involved as a sponsor? Looks like the admin manager because he's got the oversight of the stadium. Commercial may have some link with the sponsors. He might be important if the stadium is a sponsor joint venture. The football director might be important because the stadium is where you play, but the football director is already too busy with the relevant parties. So the sponsor in this case, higher chances is going to be the admin director. Could be, remember, the admin director more likely, all right? That could be one of the issues you need to think about. That would be high chance. Now, other than the people involved, you do have to consider, remember, the feasibility side. Don't forget, this company uses volunteers. Remember, they did use volunteers a bit to run. So they had a problem with this part. 36,007. Okay, so this is important for you to be aware whether or not they could take care of this place. Overview of the company already highlighted certain issues. So let's look at this part. Let's see any other information you got there. Right, so that might be one. Okay, you do need to think about the other part. Impact on stakeholders, workforce, customers, acceptability will focus on financial acceptability to owners, your shareholders. Okay, this is the acceptability part. So the shareholders. So you do need to know what's the shareholders, whether they get an NPV positive or not. Then you do need to think about your constraints and your risk for the whole project. So what are your key risks? This one, remember, you got the scope, you got time, you got cost. So you need to think about the key risk by scope, time, and cost, which hit this club a lot more. Remember, this club was hit by this one quite a bit. There you can see alliances 16, local residents. It may look like Arsenal doing great things, but the plan is awful. We blame the council. Football just wants to expand to make more money. Okay. Concern air pollution, growing traffic. Okay. Then, okay, there was also 75% against the scheme. 70%. Then, by October, the club asserted that a poll of Iceland residents found 70%. Now, this is very important because, and you got to understand, the company had to engage in terms of how to manage the issue. Campaign to aid the project to run up to Christmas, planted slogan, let Arsenal support Iceland. And then finally they approved the whole project. So you can see this part here, how they had to manage the stakeholders. Remember, keyword, how did Arsenal manage the stakeholders? Through managing the local residents' challenges. Now remember, planning permissions are granted, but local resident ISA launched a late challenge to the High Court. Plan was against the law. Okay. Duncan dismissed the case, exactly like the case study I told you to look at, because that's where the case study was involved. Okay, so at the end of the day, what were you supposed to look at? Okay, now the other issue, grant compulsory purchase order scheme, stadium later became issued local election, restricted supporters coaches to be parked in a nearby area. That's about it. Now this is the other part. How did they secure finance for this stadium? So if you look at the stadium itself, there was no public subsidy, okay, from government. And remember, this is the problem. The government doesn't want to give grants. So here, do be aware, you are talking about money for the whole project. where are you getting the money from? So I'm just going to go back one step. Financing, so I did highlight this word financing. You do need to think about where you get the money. You do think whether it's possible to get a grant. Okay, see whether you can get a grant income from the government. If possible, remember the French do get grant income. French do get grant income. So that's one of the things that you get over here. Then, okay. Club therefore sought other ways of generating income, such as making a profit on player trading, 50 million from transfers. Okay. Then the transfer and club partly funded the new training ground, which is what we have, new training ground. Club also agreed new sponsorship deal. Okay, this is very important. Group purchased 5% stake, okay, of Arsenal for 47 million, and as part of acquisition became premier media agent. Okay, now I think you can see here what I told you earlier about this idea of going into some kind of partnership. And this is a classic example of going into a partnership agreement with somebody in return for them paying for a little bit and also getting some kind of management deal. I did highlight they can manage the fan management and all those issues. So over here, they became the main media agent. Okay. Investment will be used directly to fund the new stadium. Collapse of ITV, part owned by Granada in April 2002, coincided with news that the company was tied to paying 30 million once arrangement for new stadium was finalized. So, here's another problem. Okay, the company wanted to reduce their payments. What did they do? They wanted to formulate a plan to reduce player wage bill after making losses. If the company makes a loss, you may want to consider cutting the players' wages as a means to handle the problem. Impact of the delays will now be unable to deliver, so the cost forecasted had risen. So this is where I told you this is a risk. Okay, so we can now come back and say there is a risk to the project. What are the risks? So you do know about how the financing for the club is an issue, okay? Right, we look at this issue of financing for the stadium. Remember, I haven't gone through one of the issues which is called the disaster scenario. We haven't gone through that scenario, but this is one of the scenarios that can play out because looks pretty close. Okay, looks pretty close to the events that are happening here, and they usually go back. They don't take the latest event. They go back a bit and then see the issues that pick it up. Okay. You can see over here what happened here. Throughout the summer, Arsenal gave fans the opportunity to register their interest in a relaunch bond scheme. Club planned to issue 3,000 bonds for 3,500 to 5,000 each for season ticket. Supporters reacted negatively to the news. ACCA chairman said, "We are disappointed the club has not consulted supporters before announcing the new bond scheme." Although Arsenal never stated how many bonds were sold, they did raise several £million through the scheme. Club also extended its contract with its sportswear provider Nike, 55 million over 7 years. Nike paid a minimum 1 million each year as royalty payment contingent on sales. Okay, that's another one. The sportswear, remember, you lock in. So here are some things they did. They did sell. So now you understand the fans club were not happy with that idea. So you can't simply just do whatever action you want. You do need to be aware every action that you do, there is a side effect. Okay, there's a side effect. They did raise money. Funding was secured later the year. Emirates bought naming right. 15-year deal, estimated 100 million. That also includes 7-year shirt sponsorship. Okay, notice that. Agreed a new deal worth 150 million in 2012. So they did do this thing. Shirt sponsorship was extended 5 years. Further extension was given. So this is where stadium was named Emirates Stadium to Emirates. Okay, that's how they were done. So that's an example. Okay, those are the ways they finance the whole thing. Now, do be aware, there are, of course, another one, ICO, initial coin offering, could have been one of the options that you can consider. ICO, okay, do be aware, there is one that I put before ICO, that's inside the finance class, how to handle with ICO, initial coin offering. This is the project side. You might get a question like this, okay? This is when the project, first phase, demolition, 2 months later, stand piling, okay? Then this were completed. In order to obtain license, okay, hosted 3 full non-full capacity event sessions of 20,000, 2 days. So they did a test run. They have to test this one, remember? They have to test the whole stadium before it is launched. So you do need to be aware that there must be some testing. So you must test the stadium before you can launch it. Okay, this is important for you to be aware. Then you got the loan repayment. Okay, interest 260 set on commercial fixed rate over 14-year refinance costs. They plan to convert it to a 30-year bond finance by the bank. Okay, proposed bond issue went on sale. Arsenal issued 210 million worth 13.5-year bond, 52 basis points, and 7.1-year spread, 22 basis points. The effective interest of this bond is 5.14, 5.97. So Notice that the move to the bond has reduced the club's annual debt service cost. So here's a question that you need to be aware of. You may have to repackage the bonds or loans. If the current interest rates are lower, you want to repackage them, which is what they did, okay? What they did is they went and extended the terms and also okay, that's one of the things you have to remember. There is a repackage idea which this Arsenal team did. Okay, they did do a loan repayment. Okay, that's one. Okay, Arsenal announced hybrid square development. One of the main source of income to reduce stadium debt was now debt-free and making revenue. So it's already earned its money and it's being scored. Okay. Arsenal's self-sustaining model relied heavily on qualifying for UEFA Championship. So that is one of the things that they did, and they have averaged a certain amount, okay? So that's one. Then they have that Arsenalization. Notice, program of Arsenalization after listening from feedback in a supporter in a forum. This is important, okay? This is important. They managed to get some feedback from the forum. So I think I put that here already, okay? And where did they get the information? This could be data analytics, got it? This could be data analytics as a means to get the information out. Okay, I did cover this story that was inside here that is kind of big. I'm not going to go beyond that. The structure and all that is enough. I don't think so, but you can talk about future. Waiting, SS 2008, Arsenal season ticket waiting list, seasons ticket waiting list is 40,000. Safe standing, so they are thinking about safe standing. What is safe standing? This is safe standing. This is ensure spectators are able to stand safely during event. Okay, remember, a series of fatal incidents requiring comes with all seater stadiums. So there is some technology that they are considering. Okay. What else have they done? Renovation, including install new video board, turnstile ticket readers, refurbish the roof and the wrap. Okay, those are the things that they have done. And the PA system. These are all not major technological development. Remember, this is not major technological development. Right, that's about these issues. Okay, they have got a lot of there you can see there is operated as a conference center and also summit for certain things. Okay, so those are things. Audition stage, these are other incomes that you can use, and it's a music venue. Okay, so these are, remember, other choices, the ways in which you can earn income. Other usage of a stadium. Concert, conference, and also audition. Okay, fine. Those are things that you can consider for the stadiums. Right? Let me just go back and finish up the part here. So risk assessment, I think you are clear what is a risk assessment, and you're also clear on acceptability, who should accept it. Those are the major ideas of a business case. PID, I already told you, go look at the question that you already have there. And we already identified this part. Okay, done. That's about this article possibly being tested for you. Now, let's move on to another one here. Do be aware there is another technical article here. Scope, schedule, okay, you may have a scope, schedule, budget, requirements. Okay, those are the ideas you may have to create for this one. So a project should have a scope, so when we say these words here, quality criteria, what is inside here? You do have project resources and stakeholders, and the key one here I'm more worried about is the communication plan. So these are, remember, things that are inside your PID. Communication plan, you got a communication plan, and also now, I'm not sure whether you'll get the same as the ACCA study, where all of this is important for you to understand. But anyway, since a project is likely to be an issue, you should know resources, communication stakeholders, and all of this are part of the PID. All right? Your exam team might want to touch base on that one. Okay, we are done with that issue for this case study for PID and also this part. Now, I just want to touch base with other issues inside here. Let's go back inside here. So, we did do the financials, and I did come into this part of financials. You might be presented where they're considering a strategic decision says invest in new training. No, they won't invest in a new training facility because they just did invest in a new training facility, isn't it? I think they will probably invest in the new stadium. So this one, we can change that one out. Launching a youth development program, they already did that. Changing pricing, this is more likely stuff. For ticket and merchandise, I think the pricing issue might come out. Pricing. And you already saw, when you want to do pricing, what are the problems that you can see? If you get a question on pricing, it is possible, just as a note, you do need to remember there was a question in the past that we did do about pricing called ITT train. Let me just show you the question and show you how the information might come out. So this one, no, you won't get exactly like this type of question, but you do get this idea. You might be getting data, something like this, like, what's the number of attendance, what's the delegates, what's the cost. So if you do get that one, just be aware that if pricing does comes out, you do get something like break even, and you do need to know what's the pricing you should sell the seasonal ticket. I think the seasonal ticket is a big issue because that's the one you saw inside that issue. Now, you set a price, you do need to know who to sell first, what are the issues. They might be about board structure, revealing issues that need to be addressed. Now, I think they have already showed you the board. I don't think they're going to show you board structure. Again, the board structure has already been given. There could be issues in the board. Okay, what are the issues in the board? Well, we already know the current board. It doesn't need to comply with the listed company corporate governance requirement, but you may need to comply regulator governance. We don't know how's the regulator governance, but as we can see, currently you might have an argument there might be an argument to increase the number of NED. So why should you increase the number of NED? Let's look at the question here. So the board of director itself has how many people inside here? If you look at the board of director itself, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 versus 3. So we know there is a kind of imbalance. There is currently 6 ED versus 3 NED. There's possible overwhelm of the NED voice. Then the other part, you might say, what is the other benefits? So you might reduce the perception that the board is being biased or acting in self-interest. Anyway, you have to wait and see for the unseen, whether the increase in NED is part of the unseen data or not part of the unseen. If there's anything in the unseen, you have to address the unseen all the time. So do have to consider whether an increase in NED is relevant. Okay, that's one of the issues you can consider, and you can then say, why should you increase the NED? Okay, that's one of the issues you have to consider in this question. Okay, that's one problem. The NED is currently not enough. Okay, company secretary. Okay, what can they? There is also a possibility. Why do you need the company secretary to be more involved in the board rather than just undertake COSAC matters, meaning just perform this. Number one is why the COSAC should get more involved with this question, okay, this area. So this is where I'm looking at the area of regulations and all that and how they are coming into picture. So that covers this one here, okay. We get the last one. The unseen material might include information about new government regulation. I'm very suspicious about new government regulations affecting the football club, other than what you already saw, the safety. And because of the safety of the stadium, there was a lot of cost involved. Economic data showing a downturn that could affect AT revenue. It is possible there could be downward economic data. We don't know. As of now, the only thing we can predict is there was a Brexit, but other than that, there was no issue. So we can double check one thing. There, the biggest one that came from Brexit, okay. What happened was talent pool available for employment from European Union. As part of EU, there was free movement of all members and transfer of footballers in and out of UK was simple, minimal burden. Immigration Act ended the automatic free movement. For football meant governing body, the FA Premier League introduced point-based immigration system, criteria required for player and manager that may be transferred to the UK. So that was the only major change that affected the problems for this one, okay. So you can see for women youth players, principles are similar based around club appearance, standard as well as international representation. So there were 24 points taken, stricter rules preventing youth players moving into UK. So prevents UK club from signing premature age. So that's a last one, okay, and they have to get financial license. So there was this idea of impact So that's the only thing I would suggest you to be aware of. I think that's the major one that you could see. I don't think there is any other major one. So the other one is, of course, you can say too, is the right. You do have to talk about compliance. Right, that covers that part. Okay. Okay, so one of the areas you may get to look at is going to be this idea of IoT for the whole football industry. Where can you collect data? How can you use big data and IoT to kind of improve the performance of the club and also the experience of the result? So this is where we're just going to touch base with one of the areas that could come out, which is called So when we say technology opportunities that can be considered by AT to improve, there are quite a lot. Remember, the big data is one of it. Big data is clearly one of it. How? Now, I do need to touch base with the segment one. Before I go inside the big data, we do need to touch base on the idea of segmental data. Segmental data was one of the articles that the examiner had presented. Remember, this is medical, okay? There was one for future. Now, pay attention for the medical one, okay? Why medical? Very important for this sector. Just want to highlight, okay, before segment, there is IoT potential. So I think there is one. Okay, just remember. Right, there are possible, I repeat, there are possible IoT technologies that can help the company out. Just remember that it can help the company out. Okay, advanced security system very important for a stadium, because if you're running a football club and there's a stadium, you might have to think about events, like terrorist bombing and all that. So they have to have some security in the system. Security is going to be very critical. So when we say security here, we're not only talking about cyber security, because when you are running a football club, you're talking about security in a more general sense. You do need to make sure there's a security. And there are questions on security breaches before in the past. So do make a note. There are past exams. If you get a security breach question, remember the answer is always going to be spam soap. Okay, spam soap. And using the technology is part of your spam soap answer. Just remember. So there is a past exam question on security breach. That's one of it. Now, I did talk about segmentation. Okay, the other issue here. So we have sector here. So you can see underpin strategic development. That's nothing much. Monitor for problems. This is kind of important for the player or the stadiums. Generating efficiency. This is kind of important for the stadium in terms of the outlets and their food, and helping with a particular task. This is helping with the player performance or helping the referee do their work. Okay, that's basically the users. These are the smart devices. That's all the examiner had written. So just remember what you can use it for. You can use it to help for a task, generate efficiency, monitor for problem, and help in strategic development. That's all the examiner wants you to talk about. 4 points. If you get the 4 points out, should be enough. Okay. Let's move on to the principle of market segmentation, and also the idea of should you segment. So is there a need for segmentation in this question? Well, if you look at the case study itself, let's see here. Okay, you have a little bit on market. So customer and competitor of the organization. Well, you did put AT has strong base of supporters for KLAN and abroad. AT has a number of commercial sponsors, no sponsors being regarded as lead sponsor. AT sells official replicas. This is basically from the case. Intense competition for other clubs. Yes, correct. AT has not so naming rights. Okay, those are the basic stuff inside the case study. But when we are talking about market segmentation here, let's be clear that this question here is talking about B2C. One, so you have sponsors as one of your main one. Okay, those are your major characters inside this company, remember? Well, we already say that there was nothing much here that you could do. TV also not, you don't need to, okay, you can say that is a kind of fan, okay, but those are sponsors. I don't think TV is one of the B2B market actually, Okay, um, so let's put this here. We'll put it at this level. Okay, so you have segmentation, B2C, local fans, international fan, potential fans. This one you have to think about how to convert them. So when we say fans itself, how do you analyze them? Okay, so you already know these are some of the variables male, more likely male. Then you also have older. Okay, they're probably older. Okay, why older? Well, we already know that the fact that you might have women football club also, don't forget. So I'm going to just put the demographic is going to be gender, age. Okay, those are the two main ones you want to use for demographics. Okay, let's look at the technical article here. Why it's important? Okay, so here you got this idea of age, yep, gender, marital status are important. Income, occupation, nationality, yeah, nationality is quite important in this case. Ethnic grouping, not so critical. So I'm thinking nationality, age, and gender, okay? Then you have behavior, okay, this one could be loyal, okay, and not loyal. Okay, the online shopping behavior is quite important because you do have online. So I'm just going to make a note there for you. I think nationality is important. Loyalty is the other factor. Country is quite important. Could be quite important. Geographic. Okay. The other one you got is going to be lifestyle. So you might have those issues. Yes, remember, I'm going to remove this one. Okay, you are covered with that one, the segmentation. We don't need to be worried about benefits of segmentation. You may just need to be aware what's the benefit of course, you might say what's the benefit of segmentation. Okay, so there might be some segmentation variables that are important for this question. You do need to be aware of the male, female. There are 4 categories of products. Therefore, 4 types of fans. You may have to think about whether they have international. I would suspect they don't have any international now because they are not in the international market for some time. But it's possible they still have international games and all that. That might be an issue you have to consider. So segmentation is relevant. How it's going to come out is going to be the issue. I'm not so sure how it'll come out. It's just possible that you might get a question on segmentation. So that's this model here. So remember, before the exam day, do run through each of the models. Don't assume you can just simply go in and understand what's going on here. It is critical that you are following through the text material to understand everything. Okay, that covers this issue of segmentation. Let's move on to the next issue. The next issue we're going to look at. Okay, so I'm just going to run through this page, tell you whether anything issue here or not. If you look at this page, let me just look at this page. So the management side, well, we don't have any major issue for management, okay? I would suspect you will have to wait for issues in management. As of now, you don't have any data about the company's management. You already know there is a lack of, you can't say there's a lack of diversity. You can say there's insufficient NED. That's the diversity you have. And only one family member is the, remember, only one CEO is running the company, okay? That might be one of the issues. This one, all just be careful. You can't say they don't have a centralized human resource function or standardized performance management. I think that's all speculative. AT management is not given enough priority to support internal control. Also speculative. You can't say all of that because you don't know anything. So you have to wait for the case study before you can say things like that. We can, however, comment on the information system. So remember the 6 MIB. If I was to touch the 6 MIB for this case, if you were to look at the resources audit for AT, okay, let's make sure you have a clear. The first one is material. So there is none. Not important for this question because they don't use any material. However, guys, I want you to be clear. So when you talk about the material, you may have to talk about ESG, see whether there's any problems. And this one could be use of so you have to be careful. It could be ESG issue for the material. Manpower is a very big issue for you because in this question, we did pick up the idea of resources earlier on. Remember, resources that you saw was basically the manpower was right. Remember, you have young players, women players, men players, coach, managers, other staff. These are the people involved in this. Remember, in this game, and you do need to think about the risk or where to find them, and whether or not you should sell them, and whether you should hold them. So this one, a lot about the idea of talent management requirement. So there are a few things like talent management, knowledge management should be quite important for you to manage this part, manpower. So that's an important aspect of manpower that I think you should pick up. Okay. Brand, yeah, brand is very critical for this company, but manpower is the biggest one. Other than that, I don't think you have anything major. Okay, do remember. The training center itself is not available for everybody. Remember, what happened here? Yeah, training facilities 30 years ago, 80 moved training facilities aside. 30 years ago. It was an upgrade, were upgraded 5 years ago. So 30 years ago, it moved to training center. Site 14 kilometers away from its stadium. Training facilities were upgraded 5 years ago and regarded the best in Thailand. So the first and reserve team always train in these facilities. It's the women, but under 18, the first and the reserve team always train in these facilities. But under 18 sometimes use other facilities. So we didn't know where's the females. Okay, so we can make a note there. Okay, that's one of the big question marks. You can say that they have a good training facility, but they're not using it for everybody. They're only using it for some people. Okay, that's one of the issues for manpower that I would pick up. Now, the other thing that you would have picked up is the information. Okay, information system, critical for you. Why is information system? Because they have given you a big idea. Information system, they say adequate. Now, what is the issues with the information system? ACCA has a website and its own web app. Okay, it has accounts on the longest established social media platform. Now, remember, this is very important. They have web and its own web app. Okay, and also company holds data. Okay, this is an important thing. Holds data about Right, guys. They have limited usage of issues, so that might be something you have to consider for this case. The information system. You may want to consider the need for cloud. What are possible cyber security issues for the company, or cyber security risk the company faces, and how they should manage the cyber security could be one of the areas that could come out. But application control and general controls are quite important, and how the app, remember, they hold data, that's one, compliance. The other one, they have account on the longest established social media. Now, the longest established social media, I don't know whether it's Facebook or, which one is it that they are referring to, but they may not be taking care of all the social media, which might be another problem. And they already have a problem. They don't have so many youngsters interested in the game, so that might be something they have to consider doing. Okay, done.